What's going on, everyone? So, a large majority of Lakers Nation, Laker fandom, are screaming to fire Darvin Ham. The Lakers have not been performing up to snuff. The Lakers have been a real disappointment, especially with what the idea was for this team going into the season. When you look at the roster, you look at the depth, you look at the overall talent, it's like, man, this team could be excellent, right? Just 3-4 weeks ago, Lakers win the in-season tournament. They're 5 games over 500. It's like, oh, we're cruising now. Let's go, right? Larry O'Brien next. Let's break this tie. Let's go get number 18. We are in great shape. And yet the opposite has happened. Lakers are now at 500. They have not been anything close to a contending team by any stretch of the imagination, especially lately since the in-season tournament. It's just like the Lakers have gone the complete opposite direction of what we thought and perceived. And Darvin Ham has been terrible, right? Now, look, I'm not somebody that immediately jumps to the coach, right? I am somebody that believes, look, 90% of what happens falls on the players, right? You've seen great teams with bad coaches have success. You've seen the opposite too, in many ways, right? But you've seen coaches underachieve, right? Doc Rivers is somebody that comes to mind. But the players are the ones that are out there that need to execute, need to come up with the energy, need to come up with the Lakers players just haven't played anywhere near what is just the basics for this team. And I think a lot of people are a little extreme in the Darvin Ham regards, right? Like a lot of people feel like, oh, if we just fire Darvin Ham, that's it. This team immediately just becomes the best team in the league and we're off to the races to go win the championship. And I just don't think that's the case. Would the Lakers be better? Sure. But look, the just campaign of fire Darvin Ham is completely justifiable, right? Like, again, I am not somebody that likes to I just think it's such a lazy approach to just solely blame the coach. People want that individual scapegoat. Last year it was Russell Westbrook. This year it's Darvin Ham. If the Lakers fire Darvin Ham, it's going to be somebody else, right? I am old enough to remember Phil Jackson and Laker fans wanting him gone and talking about how he's not a good coach, couldn't win anything without Jordan. Jordan made him, all that stuff. Like, I'm old enough to remember those times. And every fan base and every organization all want their coach fired when their team underperforms or underachieves. But Darvin Ham has been terrible. He has. There's no ands, ifs, buts about it. The Lakers, though, are not going to replace Darvin Ham this season. They're just not. He just signed an extension that goes through 2026. The Lakers, if they were to fire him today, who do they replace him with? Right? I've seen many people say Mark Jackson, Doc Rivers, throw out names like that. Budenholzer, I've seen a lot of people be like, oh, fire Ham and bring in Budenholzer. If you don't like Darvin Ham, there is no reason you should want Budenholzer. Like, where do you think Darvin Ham learned how to be a head coach? From Bud. He was his understudy. He was his pupil, right? So, no, Budenholzer, if you don't like Darvin Ham, you're gonna despise Budenholzer because he's even more extreme than Ham at times, right? And here's my problem. There isn't anybody to replace Darvin Ham right now. There isn't. Doc Rivers is going to go down as the most underachieving coach in NBA history. His major noteworthy accomplishments are being the number one coach in NBA history to blow 3-1 leads. He makes no adjustments, especially in the playoffs. He gets lost and regularly outcoached. He's beloved by the league. He's beloved by players. He's definitely a player coach, but so is Darvin Ham. Doc Rivers is, in my opinion, a worse move than Darvin Ham. As crazy as that might sound, because Darvin Ham, again, has been so bad. Mark Jackson, there's a reason he's never going to get another coaching job, right? If you don't know what happened with Mark Jackson and why he was let go from the Golden State Warriors, go look that stuff up. But he was doing some stuff behind the scenes, forcing players and stuff, and they came out and talked about things that he would force them to do for religious aspects and things like that. I don't want to get too heavy in it because it's not what this is about. But it was concerning, right? And there's a reason that they let him go. There was all kinds of just like buzz around that. Again, go look it up. But Mark Jackson, he's going to stay a commentator. Same thing with Doc Rivers. Who else are you going to get? Right? And you got to keep in mind a couple things. One, if the Lakers fire Darvin Ham, they still have to pay him. So they're going to have to pay him for the next, 3 years or whatever, or 3.5 years. And then they'd have to pay to hire a new coach, right? Let's say it is Doc Rivers. Just using him as an example. You bring in Doc Rivers. Now, Doc Rivers comes in and the Lakers are still bad. Everyone's going to be screaming to fire Doc Rivers. And then what? I mean, the Lakers have gone through, like 7 coaches in 5 years or whatever it's been, something crazy like that. Like the Lakers have they funneled through guys, right? It's not, look, I'm not saying that they don't need to make a coaching change at some point. I don't think getting a new head coach is the answer. I think going and getting a assistant who is familiar with being a head coach and I would prefer an offensive style head coach would be the way and direction that I would correct this. You don't fire Darvin Ham because Darvin Ham is still good with the players. He's still good with the media, right? He's a guy, I understand, he's just standing there with his pockets and stuff, doesn't make it just. But if you have somebody that has the experience that can come in, which was supposed to be the original idea, was to bring in, so if you wanted to bring in like a Doc Rivers or something like that as an assistant, which I don't think will happen, but if you wanted to bring somebody in as an assistant, then sure, by all means, go do that. Somebody that has an understanding, that knows, even then I still wouldn't bring in Doc Rivers, but if somebody becomes available that makes sense, go get that person, bring them in, see if you can get them in an assistant role. Again, preferably an offensive mind, because that's where the Lakers have really struggled. Defensively, Darvin Ham, there's no doubt about it. Darvin Ham is excellent from a defensive standpoint and a player personnel standpoint, right? He's just not good with the X's and O's so far, he was great in the playoffs. I know the Denver series was a bit of a concern, right? But against the Warriors and against the Grizzlies, he was fantastic. And he's had games where he's been very good. But I don't know. It's like he's as inconsistent as the players are. Right? So, again, there is no answer currently. Darvin Ham, I think, would make a perfect assistant coach. I just don't think I think he's in over his head as far as, the adjustments, right? Lineups. I don't mind experimentation. I don't. Talked about it in the offseason. Hey, there's going to be a lot of trial and error, but we're past the experimentation side, right? This is becoming a problem. And look, there are some games, though, where it's not his fault. We just have 6 guys out, and it's who else is he supposed to play? There's a lot of times, even last game, right? Have no D'Lo, no Rui Hachimura, no Cam Reddish, no Gabe Vincent. You're out 4 guys. And it's well, what's with the rotation? It's who else is he supposed to play? You only have so many players. But my biggest problem more than anything, right? Because again, rotations, just performance, things like that, look good. I mean, anything you do looks good when the players are playing well, right? So it doesn't matter what Darvin Ham's rotation is if guys are hitting the open shot and not turning the ball over and rebounding the basketball. Again, you can throw out different lineups that look it's one of those things. When players are performing to the level that you need them to perform, things can look good. But when it's the opposite is happening and players are underachieving, now all that stuff starts to look bad. Right? So a lot of his rotations, I'm not as critical of as others are, because I don't think they're that bad. Again, he has some that are terrible. But he does have a couple where it's okay, I understand what he's trying to do here. I get the idea. And then there's also some games where nobody is playing well and he's just trying to find somebody. Right? And people are why are you putting this guy in? It's who else is he going to put in? Everybody has been awful. You're hoping that Max Christie goes in and shoots the lights out, right? So again, situationally, there's some stuff that I think are kind of overblown and blown out of proportion, and then there's some stuff that I think are right. But again, it comes down to the players, right? Players are playing well, right? Like, you look some of the games, he'll default to certain rotations or certain lineups. And then some games, like, people will be like, oh, that lineup is terrible. Why is he doing it? And then he'll do the same lineup in the next game. And the Lakers will beat a team by like 20. And everyone's like, man, like, the Lakers look really good. And it's like, it was the same. He did the exact same thing the previous game. Just didn't work. But now, because it worked, it looks good, right? But my biggest issue is the way he utilizes personnel. It drives me crazy. The talent that he has on this roster, and just does nothing to capitalize on it, especially in spots where, like Rui, for example, we struggle offensively a lot. And there are times where Rui's out there and we're like 0 of 5 from the field, and Rui is just tucked away in a corner. I would be screaming to get him on the block and get him the basketball, because he is probably either going to make the bucket or he's going to get to the foul line, and then that generates offense, right? The way he uses Christian Wood drives me crazy, right? He uses some of these guys that aren't 3-and-D guys, like as if they are 3-and-D guys. And the lack of just like, he's very limited in his play call. People act like Darvin Ham doesn't run any plays. He does. Lakers are constantly running various sets and plays and things, but he doesn't make the proper adjustments based on the personnel that is on there. Or, finding the hot hand or whatever, right? Or for a while, it's gotten better, but for a while, like even like Anthony Davis. And Darvin Ham even called himself out on it and was like, he has an idiot coach that, doesn't get him the basketball, right? It's like, those are the things that drive me the most insane. It's like, you have personnel on this team that can help with some of the stuff that we are lacking, but you're not putting them in a position as a leader and as the coach to have them best utilize their skill set to impact this roster. He just kind of has them out there floating. And I understand you have LeBron James, but that doesn't mean you can't have some level of structure. Darvin Ham likes to just kind of default to LeBron a lot and just like, oh, well, LeBron's on the court, so let him kind of run and operate anything. But again, like, sometimes that's okay. Sometimes that's probably the best course of action. But you need to have an understanding of when and where is that time. And that is what I think Darvin Ham lacks. I don't think he has the real understanding because he doesn't have the experience. So he doesn't have that feel yet of like, okay, I need, like right now, we're not getting anything, so just put the ball in LeBron's hands and let him generate something, right? And then there's other times where it's like, okay, we have a mismatch here, let's exploit that, right? Like, okay, now would be a good time to run this set or this play, right? That is where he doesn't like. The timeout thing, I know a lot of people like are really upset about like the way he calls timeouts. There are times where it drives me crazy, but some of that stuff, I mean, it's all, most coaches nowadays, like name me a coach outside of like maybe Eric Spoelstra that is great with timeouts. Like even Steve Kerr can drive you crazy with the way he calls timeouts. Greg Popovich even, he's notorious for just letting guys play. A lot of coaches kind of like to let guys play, especially when they have veterans like LeBron or AD, because you like to let them figure it out. To me, a lot of the timeouts are just, it's personal. Like, it's just your opinion, right? Rather than like, okay, you could have stopped the run, when they scored 5. It's like, okay, if the rate in which this team is playing right now, we would be out of timeouts by the first quarter. So, no, at some point, you got to let players play, right? But I do think he doesn't have a good feel of like, okay, when should we cut this momentum? When should we cut? Okay, let's let him play a little bit. Let's let it, okay, it's gotten to 5. Okay, it's gotten to 7. All right, let's let it get to 15, right? Rather than like, okay, it's at 7. Okay, now it's at 8. We're encroaching double figures here. now's a good time to call the timeout. Right? He'll kind of let it get a little too far. And again, it's that balance, it's that understanding. That's why I would like to have a veteran coach on the bench alongside Ham who can say, hey, buddy, now would be a good time. Hey, buddy, this would be great to do. Things like that is where I lie. But Darvin Ham has absolutely been a problem this year. He is definitely part of the problem. He's not the main and only problem, right? Because again, players still have to show up. Darvin Ham isn't out there missing shots. Darvin Ham isn't out there turning the ball over. Darvin Ham isn't out there not rebounding. Darvin Ham isn't out there just, LeBron James not closing out, right? Like Darvin Ham, a coach only controls so much. I don't care who the coach is, right? Coach only controls maybe 5% of the overall game. Like, what is the coach's job, right? To call timeouts, to halt runs and or get guys breaks or whatever they need, to basically call timeouts and game manage, right? Manage games, get guys in and out, right? So rotations, timeouts, and ensuring that plays are being executed properly, and then have your team prepared, right? But again, you can have the most preparation of any coach ever. If the players don't execute, then it's irrelevant. Again, you can study as much as you want for a test, but once you get to the test, if you don't, provide the right answers, or you forget or whatever, then it doesn't mean anything. Then all your studying was for nothing. And you could have the best teacher, the best professor, the best whatever. Again, Darvin Ham is a problem. If somebody made sense that was available, fire him and go get that guy. I have no issues firing Darvin Ham, right? I don't think Darvin Ham is right now currently a championship level coach, but there is nobody that makes sense right now. Maybe in the offseason, maybe somebody becomes available and it's like, okay, let's go get that guy. That could be a possibility. And the Lakers are usually pretty good with just getting rid of coaches and stuff, right? Like they're pretty good about like, hey, let's not draw this out too long. But he's not going anywhere this year. You're in the middle of the season. You got to ride it out, right? Because now you're going to what? You're going to fire him. You're going to bring in a new coach. And that coach is starting from scratch. And you have half a season to figure it out. Like, again, Rob Pelinka is better off consolidating the roster because what is one of his biggest problems? Rotation, right? And guys, figuring out what guys to play where. Well, if you consolidate that rotation, it makes it easier. If you basically cut this roster down to 8 guys, like 8 real rotation pieces, well, then guess what? Now Darvin Ham doesn't have to figure out how to get 12 guys minutes, right? Now he only has to get those 8 guys minutes. So you do something like that, that'll make him better. As we saw, like, why was he so good in the playoffs? I think part of it was his rotation he only had 8 guys, 9 guys to play, and he just played those guys, right? So he was just able to kind of keep them in and out and whatever, right? Well, now you can do the same thing if you consolidate this roster, make it more accessible for him in his limitations as somebody that's pulling these guys in and out, things like that. But anyway, as always, this is a discussion, so I pass the question on to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? Again, like I said, I think that we are stuck with Darvin Ham for at least the foreseeable future. Again, maybe it changes, but don't get your hopes up. Again, Darvin Ham is definitely a part of the problem. He is. He is a big part of the problem. But he's not the sole reason. Like, getting rid of Darvin Ham does nothing if the players don't show up. Right? Would we be better with a better coach? Sure. Right? Coaching does matter. I'm not saying coaching doesn't matter. Right? But, again, players still have to do their part, and the players just aren't doing their part. So you start with the players, you consolidate, you get guys that make more sense, you see how does Darvin Ham respond to that. Okay, does it work? Cool. If it doesn't work, well, then now you know the other major problem, so you get rid of them, right? The problem is like, let's say the Lakers go and trade for Zach LaVine and the Lakers win the NBA championship. Guess what? Darvin Ham isn't going anywhere. So that's something to keep in mind also. But anyway, again, let me know down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me out a lot. Lets me enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. If not subscribed to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you all in the next one. Thank you.